Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Unpaid Interns. It is Monday, August 17th. Great show lined up for you today. Tamar Scher is joining me as a co-host today. Tamar, new setting, you are officially in Bloomington.
Officially at IU. I'm so excited. It's been beautiful. I moved in a couple of days ago and the campus is just as gorgeous as ever. I'm really just happy to be back. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm settled in now officially. Been here for over a week, so I think I can officially say I'm settled in. This is the fourth of many episodes in the man cave, I guess you could call it. We're gonna I've been told that I have to redecorate the man cave. It doesn't
Why
look
didn't you
great
bring
on
your
camera.
flags? Where are the
The
flags?
pennants, no, they're in the boyhood home. They stayed in Fort Wayne, but I'll have to add some decorations of some sort behind me on the white wall. But because I don't know if we're gonna be moving in to studios or anything anytime soon. We do have a great show lined up for you today. Play-by-play voice of the Indianapolis Colts, Matt Taylor, will be joining us shortly, talking all things Colts as they opened up training camp to the media for the first time today. So we'll get Mr. Taylor's first thoughts on what he saw. I know Zach Kiefer, who is expecting to join us on Friday, he tweeted out that he'll never take for granted getting to watch somebody play football again. He said it was just so fantastic to be back out there. But let's talk college football tomorrow. It's the story that never stops being a story right now, because the Big Ten may have thought they put it to bed by canceling the season. That is certainly not the case. Justin Fields is spearheading a movement that, as of 9 a.m. tomorrow, I think had over 200,000 signatures. He wants college football back in the Big Ten.
It's now up to 250,000
My
last time I
God.
checked, and it's continuously rolling in, which is insane. And then tonight, the SEC is supposed to announce their schedule at 7 p.m. So who knows? Everything you're listening to is saying there is a good chance people are going to follow in suit in the Big Ten. And now everyone's going to, in a couple months, say, oh, Kevin Warren did the right thing, caught it early. But who knows? They're going to continue with the opening of the schedules and continue on and resume and try and get some sort of normalcy. But this is the storyline that never ends.
No,
And I just don't foresee this being a thing. I don't think college football can go.
it's not going to end for a while. It's not going to end until everyone cancels, and even then it might still go on. But here's the thing. I think there are issues on both ends. I think the Big Ten needs to be more transparent with their medical advice that they're getting. Let people know, look, this is what the doctors are telling us. This is why we are canceling. But also, of course, the players and the fans and the parents want football. We all want football. But when the medical experts tell us it's not a smart thing to do, we need to listen to the medical experts. And that's kind of where I stand on this. Like, of course you want to play. We totally understand that. Justin Fields is going to be a Heisman Trophy, possible number one overall pick in the NFL draft. Of course he wants to play. They could win the national championship at Ohio State. But this just isn't going to happen. The Big Ten is going to look spineless if they go back on their word because 220,000 fans or whatever it may, or players, whatever the number may end up being, just because some players and parents think that they should play. It's not a great look already for the Big Ten. They have not been in a great limelight, and Kevin Warren was put into a really difficult position. But he and the Big Ten are going to look even worse if they go back on their word and somehow in the middle of a pandemic say, you know what, we think it actually is safe enough for football. That would just be bizarre to me.
Absolutely. I don't know how that could even happen. I don't know how that would be able to go down. And like I was saying, I just think that it's the constant trend that we're going to see as people are going to follow in suit, but you never really know.
Well, tomorrow, let's talk playoffs. I'm sorry, your Blues are struggling a little bit. Did they win last night? Or
They
did they
won
get...
last night,
Okay.
our first win of
Okay.
the
I was
entire
out of it
restart.
last night in terms of hockey. I know the Blackhawks won and then I lost it. I didn't look at the last two games. But the Blues are struggling tomorrow. I need you to explain what's going on with your Blues.
They are totally in championship hangover is what we've been saying in St. Louis. I think that we've seen a little bit out of them, but it's really been Not great. I mean, last night was their first win in the entire restart, which is okay, gaining a little bit momentum. So now they're not going to be eliminated. But who knows?
Yeah.
Not yet, but we'll see. I'm hopeful because I got my St. Louis. I'm still repping, but they're not doing great. The Blackhawks are looking pretty good,
No,
honestly.
they were down 3-0. They're in trouble as well. The NBA playoffs also start tonight. The Pacers begin tomorrow, so make sure you keep an eye on ESPN and TNT for that action. Let's bring in our guest for today. He is the voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Very kind to join us here on the first day of media availability at training camps. Matt Taylor joins us. Matt, how are you? I think you might still be muted. Let's see. There
Rookie move. Come on, guys, man. No, I'm well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. I guess our first question, did you get out to training camp today, and what was it like to get back out there and see the guys?
I was at practice today, and it was the first full padded practice, so it's kind of like the return to normalcy as far as that goes, which is great. The energy was really good. I thought there was a lot that was accomplished. The pace was well. I mean, it was full go, full pads, crunching at times, a good thud consistently throughout. So, I mean, it's been all weird and different up until I think most of the players will tell you that outside of practice, just physically playing football, it's different. It's certainly a new normal, but football is football. And when they get out there, there's a lot they have to accomplish in a short amount of time. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it. No preseason games this year. The roster has decreased from 90 to 80 by yesterday. And so there's a lot they have to get done in a short amount of time. And we're going to be playing a regular season football game that's going to mean a whole heck of a lot right out of the gate. AFC South game, all of that against the Jaguars in less than a month. So they have to get going, and they have to jam-pack all these days they have available to them.
Well, before we get too far into the Colts, I do want to, and you kind of mentioned it there at the beginning, kind of a sense of normalcy. How nice is it for you to just kind of get out of the past few months and get back out on the football field and feel like, okay, it's my time to do my job again. Everything kind of feels back to normal.
I'm incredibly blessed. I mean, I'm just excited to be around sports and have the ability to watch a football practice and get ready to call a game. Like I said, in less than a month, a lot of people in my shoes have their season already canceled or compromised in some other way. So, yeah, just incredibly excited to get to know these guys. From my standpoint, watching practice is very beneficial, because I memorize names and numbers and body types and how they're using guys, and pay attention to packages and who's running with the ones and who's running with the twos, and jotting all that down. But we're incredibly busy in terms of, daily programming that we have going on. And then plus getting ready for week one in terms of a game day prep. It's just nice to get out of the rut of, man, what's going on between the league and the Players Association, who's balking at who, and, are we going to play? What's it going to look like? Now that we know we are going to play and the things that are in place in order to get us there, it's nice to just be talking about the sport itself.
Totally diving right in. The Colts have seemed now to really add to their defensive lineup. So you got DeForest Buckner now. What have you been able to see thus far? I know it's just kicking off, but what do you think we can expect from them now going into the season and into hopefully some normalcy of football?
Right. Yeah, it's funny because the NFL, I mean, every NFL player is, just chiseled, right? I mean, you're talking about elite players in terms of physique and conditioning and the way they look. But DeForest Buckner is a man among boys, even when you're talking about NFL players, right? I mean, guys like DeForest Buckner just don't grow on trees. 6'7", 295 pounds. Plus, he can move like a cat. I mean, he is one of the best three-tech defensive tackles in the NFL for a reason. And that's why the Colts went out and, gave up a high price to bring him in. Right before the draft, they gave up the 13th overall pick to the San Francisco 49ers. So I think he is going to help the defense on every level. Obviously, he's going to be giving a push up front. And that's just something the Colts didn't have last year. In fact, they only had 3.5 sacks total from their defensive tackles all year. And so that's just not going to get it done when you play the scheme the Colts play, which is a 4-3. And you rely a lot on your linebackers to scrape free and make plays. It's going to help guys like Darius Leonard and Anthony Walker in that regard. But I just have this mental image in my head last year of quarterbacks stepping up into the pocket, kind of sliding through pressure, easy check down completions, check downs down the field, going for big yards. That was kind of the theme in the last quarter of the season. I think DeForest Buckner wipes all of that out. I mean, quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, they'll tell you if you have pressure coming from the inside up front right on you, there's nowhere to go. That means the guys on the outside like Justin Houston or Al-Quadin Muhammad or Komoko Toure, that means they're getting home. I already talked about what it's going to mean in the running game for the linebackers, but I think the biggest thing is in the secondary. You know, like the last couple of years, the Colts completion percentage wise have given up over 70% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. That's a lot. In fact, it's the first time ever in consecutive seasons a defense has allowed over 70% completion percentage. So 18 and 19, they're trying to kind of wipe that away from their defensive resume. So I just think that the secondary potentially is not going to have to cover as long. And, you know, you'll be looking at quarterbacks, you know, being shaky in the pocket, having to make quicker decisions. So I think on every level, DeForest Buckner is kind of the guy that drives the ship. That's really going to make this defense better in all respects.
Relatively speaking, for Indianapolis, a pretty busy offseason in terms of signing Buckner, signing Rivers, a good draft with some really good young talent there, Jonathan Taylor, Pittman as well. In your mind, what's the biggest move right now that the Colts made this offseason that might have the biggest impact?
Oh, I think it's DeForest Buckner. I really do. I think it's DeForest Buckner because of everything I just said. But if offensively speaking, I guess big picture wise, you know, and Frank Reich talked about this today, their biggest focal point now until the start of the season is being more explosive, finding bigger plays in all three phases of the game. And you say on special teams, you know, last year towards the end of the season, they had those big 2 punt returns for a touchdown by Nyheim Hines, the same game against the Carolina Panthers. So I think they found some explosivity, if you will, in the return game in that regard. But on offense last year, they were 30th in passing and 30th in passing plays over 20 yards. And towards the end of last season on defense, you know, the last 5 games of the season, the secondary allowed on average 299 yards passing to offenses. So, you know, you bottom line, you didn't have enough on offense and too much on defense, especially last 5 games or so. So Phillip Rivers coming in here, he doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have to throw for 5,000 yards and, you know, 40 touchdowns. He just needs to be Phillip Rivers to go along with maybe the best offensive line in the game, collectively speaking, a great running game that finished 7th in the NFL last year, a 1,000-yard rusher coming back in Marlon Mack. You've got Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the best, you know, NCAA running backs of all time. You invested in a fullback in Roosevelt Nix. So, you know, he just needs to be himself. And a typical Phillip Rivers type season is, you know, you hover between 3,900 and, you know, 4,200 yards passing, between 65 and 68% completion percentage. I mean, there's nothing at this stage of the game for Phillip Rivers heading into year number 17 that he hasn't seen. I know it's a new offense and it's a new, you know, setting, but he knows Frank Reich. He knows the offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni. Those 3 guys were all together, you know, in a prior stint with the San Diego Chargers. So they know this offense collectively. They all kind of think the same. So there's not going to be a learning curve for Phillip Rivers. He just needs to have, you know, a typical Phillip Rivers type season in order for this offense to score a lot of points.
And Phillip Rivers has that unique personality. I think that's one of his main traits. Not only does he have a lot of experience, he has an impressive resume, but he's going to bring something to the Colts that's really important, that energy factor. Do you have any intel on what that's going to look like, how he's going to contribute that positive, insane, unique amount of energy to the Colts?
He is. He's just that. I mean, he is a unique guy. He's got a great, positive attitude, and he's coming in knowing that in some regards he's the new guy, but he's also understanding that just inherently speaking, playing quarterback, coming over in free agency, he needs to be a leader. He needs to be a vocal part of this team. And I think guys are gravitating towards him, and they know his resume kind of speaks for itself. I mean, you're talking about a guy that in a lot of people's eyes, is a, I don't know about first ballot Hall of Famer, but he has Hall of Fame qualities on his resume. You're talking top 10 in passing all time in basically every category. Really, the only thing missing on his resume is the postseason success. And that's why I think the Colts and Phillip Rivers are trying to get as much as they can out of one another, try to take advantage of this marriage for as long as they possibly can, right? The Colts want Rivers to be great, and Phillip Rivers, hopefully he plays well enough where he considers coming back to the Colts in free agency because it's only a one-year deal. But yes, Phillip Rivers definitely has a very good, positive attitude about him. He's very optimistic about the season and what he can bring to this team. And you're seeing guys like T.Y. Hilton, Anthony Costanzo, some of the veterans that are already in the locker room gravitating towards him and buying into him because they know, like, this is one of the guys that can really take us to where we want to go and kind of fill in the gaps where we were deficient on offense last year.
On the defensive side, we talked about Buckner, but I think this offseason, Darius Leonard's getting a little bit more fly. You're starting to see him get a little more attention, but a lot of it's about the lack of attention and how he kind of has this chip on his shoulder about everybody kind of doubting him, not being a Pro Bowler and that type of stuff. Is there a lot of truth to what people talk about where he really holds that stuff on his shoulder and really wants to make the doubters pay? And what should we expect from him as he takes the leap to year 3?
Yeah, I think Darius talks very openly about this. He uses basically any ammunition that he can to his advantage. Anybody that's slighting him or is criticizing him. And we're talking about a guy that, he really was dying to go to Clemson. He wanted to go to Clemson. For whatever reason, just couldn't. It didn't happen, whether it was in terms of grades or being overlooked physically, being tabbed too small or too slow or not strong enough, whatever it is. So, really from a very young age, he has let all of his doubters and wanting to prove people wrong fuel his fire for greatness. And, you can talk about a guy that's, in his first 2 years, you're talking about he broke the Colts record for tackles in a season, first team All-Pro, second team All-Pro, made a Pro Bowl last year, but he's still PO'd about not making the Pro Bowl in his rookie season. It gets down to the nitty-gritty of like taking umbrage with his Madden rating on video games and getting pissed off about that. And, I'm the 4th best linebacker according to ESPN.com, not the first. So it's just all little stuff like that he uses to his advantage. And, some guys just need that. I think it just depends on your personality. Like me, if I was an NFL player, I would probably avoid Twitter at all costs because, it's just a dangerous game. There's not a lot of usefulness to it. Darius is the exact opposite. He is searching his name, trying to find out who's talking bad about him, making a list. If that's what gets you going, then so be it, and good for you. So that's how Darius operates. He tries to use all of that negativity out there, and it tries to channel that into proving people wrong. And, so far so good. So I think he's still motivated, still has a chip on his shoulder. A lot of people said that he was the worst draft pick in 2018. The Colts reached big time to take a player like that from an FCS school in the second round. So I think he still has a lot to prove in his eyes. He's never going to rest on his laurels. And because of what I said about DeForest Buckner, I think Darius Leonard could make even more game-changing plays, whether it be sacks, turnovers, strips. I think he's in store for another big year, maybe his biggest year yet.
Well, for Colts fans, I feel like every fan base has this. They have a where were you when type of moment. And obviously the Colts, you got the Peyton Manning Super Bowl in Miami. But recently, and we've talked about this with a lot of our Colts guests, the Andrew Luck retirement moment in the preseason game. And what kind of went through your head that night? What were you doing? And kind of what was the reaction to it?
Well, I'll keep it very short. Obviously, it was in the middle of a game, so we were broadcasting a game. Yeah. So I was doing play-by-play. It was last year. It was week 3 of the preseason. The Colts were playing the Bears. The news broke like middle of the third quarter in the second half, and just like everybody else, I've got I'm doing my play-by-play, but between breaks, I like to just check my notifications, and I set up a lot of notifications just for injuries or news or what have you. And so we go to a break, and I check my phone, and there it is. Adam Schefter, who has 7 million followers, whatever the tweet said, paraphrasing, according to sources, Andrew Luck has decided to retire. And obviously, my mouth hit the floor and had no heads up, no insider information as far as that goes. The first thing I did, to be honest with you, is make sure it wasn't like a fake account, like a Darn Schefter or something like that. I didn't want to get hoodwinked as far as that goes. So then, from that point out, it was just trying to make sure that the information was accurate, was solid, in terms of what we could report, when we could report it, things like that. But, as soon as we were able to get the news out, we kind of, in my mind, I'm sure we did an okay job of play-by-play, but from that standpoint, as more and more people started to find out the news, they were going to turn on the TV and they were going to turn on the radio to find out what was what. So we tried the best we could to turn the broadcast, the second half into somewhat of a news bulletin, every 3 or 4 plays. If you're just with us, here's what's going on. This is all the information we have. Stay tuned after the game. We'll hear from Frank Reich and, whatever, whoever else was going to talk at that point. But yeah, no, I mean, it was one of those things. I'll never forget where I was the night Andrew Luck retired, because I was in the midst of my job. And it was one of those things. I woke up the next day and thought it was a dream. I thought it didn't happen. It was just that surreal. So, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that you never plan for. You never think your franchise quarterback's going to retire in the middle of a game like that, even when he's on the field, physically still with the team. It was everything about it was unique in every way.
Well, I know no one wants to talk about COVID, but I do want to at least address what you're kind of looking at this season in terms of protocols. As a guy who travels with the team, kind of does the radio broadcast everywhere they go, what have you kind of been told in terms of protocols for the upcoming season?
So we've been working remotely since March. It's funny, today was actually my first day back since March. So I was able to go watch practice and be around certain folks in the building. Had to wear a mask, had to get temperature checked on the way in, things like that. I'm sure you guys have talked and heard about the tier system within the NFL. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. They all have different, I guess, degrees on their how close they are to players and coaches and things like that. I'm not a tiered person, and I'm fine with that. I understand why I would not be a tiered person. They're trying to bubble these guys up as best as they can and get them, ready for week 1. And, if that's fans in the stands or really let's be clear about stuff. They just need to get these games on TV. That's the biggest goal here in 2020. I don't think you have to hide around the fact of that. But, we're still trying to figure out what our travel situation looks like. If we can't travel with the team because they want to bubble those guys up from a travel standpoint, which you can understand why they would want to do that. We got to figure out if it makes sense for us to, drive on our own, if it makes sense. We're also highly considering the notion of broadcasting games remotely, like you're seeing Major League Baseball do, the NBA down in the bubble. So we're trying to figure out what all that entails, logistically, how we can do it and things like that. But yeah, it's certainly going to be different. Even when we do home games at Lucas Oil Stadium and the radio booth, which is not all that big to begin with, there's plexiglass involved separating, there's those dividers separating the amount of people in there. So we're still trying to figure all that out. I know it's, we're getting kind of down to crunch time here, about 3 weeks, but I think it's a strong possibility of having to do games remotely.
And this is a hard question to answer because, like you're saying, this season's going to be completely different than anything you've ever experienced. You've been in this industry for so long, but this will be your second full season as the voice of the Colts. How does it feel this offseason versus last year's, having now a full season under your belt?
No, it's good. No, that's a good question. It's all about routine. Within this industry, within the National Football League, there is a pattern about it. Like obviously in season, it's just go, 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 go. You play a game and you rinse, wash, repeat the next week. As soon as Sunday is over, Monday is all about starting the process of getting ready for the next upcoming game, all the, weekly programming that we have. And so, in season, those, let's say 22 weeks, if you factor in training camp, they truly are a blur. They just go by so fast. You blink and it's week 8. And so there's like a heavy deadline feel to it. But then in the off season, you're certainly busy, but it's a different pace about it. There's highs and lows. There's peaks and valleys of busyness, if you will. You have the combine and then free agency, and then in April you have the draft, and after that it's the OTAs intensify, mini camps in June, and then really the deadest part of the year is in mid-June and July before training camp begins. But so this will be my 9th year with the Colts, and as you said, second interim play-by-play guy in 2018, second full season heading into 2020. So it's just trying to make tweaks and subtle changes to what works, what we can do different, what hasn't worked in the past from a programming standpoint, trying new things out. That's kind of the funnest job of experimenting with all the different, all the amount of programming that we have. And we got a lot of good people that help us out. It's not just me. It's our digital department does a great job. Our video department does a good job. And we're all kind of collaborating on, hey, I talked to this guy about this, so I'm gonna pull this from that. So it's a whole lot of fun. But I would say I don't work for a living. That's my biggest takeaway is I truly do have a dream job. I don't feel like I work. I feel like I just get to talk about football. I get to be around sports, and I get to do it in, the town that I grew up, for a team that I grew up rooting for. So, the odds of that happening for somebody like me are like 1 in a million. So I don't take it for granted. It's truly a blessing. It's a big responsibility. It's one that I don't take lightly. But I would say those, in this case, in 2020, those 16 regular season games, that's the most fun I'll have all year. Those 16 3-hour respective time periods. That's why you put in all that work.
Well, I do want to talk about your career and getting to your dream job. I mean, you worked, like you said, with the Colts. You were a sideline reporter for a while, then the interim job. As someone who, from what I've read up about you and what I know about you, you've always wanted to do this since college. What was kind of those years where you're a sideline reporter? Were you actively trying to find a play-by-play gig? How did you stay patient? And kind of what's your advice to people who are still out there looking for jobs and how they can try and be patient and wait for the right one?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was always a goal of mine to do play-by-play professionally somehow, some way. That was always a goal of mine. I was that stereotypical 10-year-old kid who knew then what he wanted to do and really geeked out about it. Like I would sneak in a transistor radio and fool my parents, although they probably knew about it. I'd stay up and listen to Monday Night Football. I wanted to listen to as many games as possible to figure out how a good game sounded. And I would imitate what the great ones would do. And so, I mean, everything I did, I mean, I was a decent athlete. I played high school sports, 3 sports, went on and played 4 years of college football at a D3 school in central Indiana. So it was all about positioning myself the best I could. And so, I did a ton of, thankless, not glamorous jobs. I worked at a country music station. I was a country music DJ, and I hated country music, but it was just a chance to get behind a mic and get experience. And that was what was great about going to a Division III school was, when you're a freshman, you can just jump right in and you can be the voice of the basketball team, the baseball team. There just wasn't as many people that I went to school with that were as passionate about it as I was. So I was able to kind of take advantage of all those different opportunities. So it didn't matter that I wasn't calling Division I games. It just mattered that I was behind the mic getting experience. And then after graduation, you just get as many jobs as possible. I worked at MS Communications, as a board operator, then a producer, and kind of worked my way up there. I did a lot of high school, play-by-play, some small college sports play-by-play. And then I got a chance to come over with the Colts in 2012 and manage the entire production of the radio department, if you will. So that meant, planning all the shows, producing the shows, coming up with the programming, operating the radio network with all of our different affiliates. So I was kind of like the man behind the scenes, and my DNA and my fingerprints were all over everything. The only thing I wasn't doing was calling the games. So the longer I've been with the Colts since 2012, every year I was able to kind of show that I could do more, and I was capable of doing more than what they just hired me for. So I took that 6-7 years to show my versatility and my skill set, and really kind of build up some loyalty and trust within the organization. And you're right, you had to stay patient. I mean, I took that job knowing that, man, this is not by far, this is not a slam dunk. This is not a guarantee that I'll be in a position to get the play-by-play job, but it was an end. It was a foot in the door to show what I could do. And then after that, you just kind of hope for the best. And, wherever the cards lay at the end of the day, then that's what was going to happen. But yeah, you had to stay patient. And then when there was an opening in 2018, they said, we trust you to have a shot at this. And it was essentially just a 5.5-6 month audition. And it was kind of nerve wracking. There was a lot of anxiety because, there's a lot of people that have a say in this. Do they think I'm doing the right thing? I'm doing the best I can, but do I need to be doing something different? Do I need to be doing something that they think I need to be doing? Trying to think like someone else thinks all the time is, darn near impossible. And so at some point in the middle of the season, I just said, no, forget it. I know I'm good enough. I know I'm passionate enough. I know I have the skills to do this job. I'm going to just do the best I can, do it my way, live in faith and not fear. And then whatever happens will happen, and I'll be, at peace with it. But yeah, no, there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of long hours. There's a lot of, like I said, non-glamorous things that you have to do to build up trust, to build up loyalty, to be in a position to have a shot at those jobs. But that's, like I said, I'm incredibly lucky to be, I'm one of 32 NFL play-by-play guys, it's just the odds are very, 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 very slim. So I don't take it for granted. It's something I enjoy every single day, being able to just wake up, talk football, read about football. But I would say, my biggest piece of advice, again, like I was a 22, 23-year-old kid right out of college, and I thought I was going to be the next Bob Costas, I thought I was really, really good. And then you got to get humbled a little bit to figure out, man, you got to go through some stepping stones here. You got to pay your dues. If you're serious about this, you're going to have to kind of climb uphill a little bit. And, my first job right out of school, or one of my first jobs, like I said, was at Emmis. And I was part-time as part-time could be, answering phones for a high school sports show that aired from 9:30 to midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. So you can imagine being 22 years old and your buddies are like going out to the bars, they're hanging out, and they're like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And then you tell them, and they look at you like you're crazy. But if you say no to that job, you say no to everything after that. And I was able to kind of work my way up the ladder, but that was a foot in the door type of job. And if you say no to it, you slam the door on every possibility after that.
Right. We're constantly told, say yes. And
say yes to everything. Absolutely. Say yes. You are not good enough for anything. It's funny. Like, again, like I said, I was paid to answer phones and write down scores, in the middle of the winter, like Lagodi versus Jasper. There's nothing more part-time than that. But within weeks, they're in a pinch. I'm producing the show, and I show up for like board producer orientation. And I'm like, why don't you, I'm telling the guy who's training me, like, why don't you do it this way? And he's like, yeah, I never thought of that. Right. So it's just being passionate, being dedicated, and just taking advantage of every inch of an opportunity somebody will give you.
And of course, this is what you've always dreamed of. You are an incredible role model to us and everyone else who is listening that is aspiring to go into sports broadcasting, because you're there, you made it. Do you have any stories that really stick out to you or have stuck out to you that this is why I love this? This is why I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, yeah, I mean, every game, I mean, every great moment that we've had since 2018, you go back to, I think we played the Giants in 2018, like week 16, as that stretch, if you remember, the Colts closed out the season, 9 wins in 10 games, and their margin for error was this big in order to make the playoffs. And so it wasn't going well in that game. And we knew if they didn't win that game, boy, the next week was going to be like scenario city. Like, this team has to lose, this team has to lose, this team has to lose in order for the Colts to like win a tiebreaker or something to get in the playoffs. And they come back, they beat the Giants. Malik Hooker picks off a pass to seal the win for the Colts off of Eli Manning, with like 30 seconds left. Lucas Oil Stadium's going crazy. I'm going crazy. And I'm just like goosebumps. Just talking about it is just giving me goosebumps. And like driving home, just thinking about like, holy crap, like what did I just get to do? Like, how cool was it that I just got to narrate a game and bring home, bring to life the action of a game to hundreds of thousands of people listening to the game. And for the most part, they're all Colts fans and they're all rejoicing with my call and, my energy on the call through the radio. It's like, how cool is that? Like, how blessed am I to have this job? Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you can't just take it for granted. And I certainly don't. And I just have a lot of fun with it. And, I prepare like no end for these games because, it's that, having played sports, having played football, like I'm a strong believer in that old cliche that, that Vince Lombardi line, if, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. I strongly believe in that. Like, every game is like a test, it's a final exam. If you're ready to go and you're prepared and your stuff, then the test should be easy. And not that Sundays are easy for me. And in year 2, I'm the best play-by-play guy in the NFL, like far from it. But it's kind of like being a player in that regard. Like, you just don't want to get overwhelmed, and you want to rise the responsibility of bringing, the game and Colts seasons to life for the listener.
Well, I think I was on the way home from IU or something during that game, because I was one of those fans rejoicing in my car, hearing you bring that game to life. When you talk about your preparation, I got to know, because I've switched recently. Are you a handwritten guy? Are you a print guy? What do you do when you're preparing?
So I'm definitely a computer guy, like a printout guy, because my handwriting is atrocious. There's sometimes even I can't read my own handwriting, and that's saying a lot. Like, my wife looks at my handwriting and she's like, I have no idea what this letter even is. Like, I have no idea what this word starts with. And I'll look at it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know either. But with that said, I've got a lot of printouts in front of me, and I have my computer in front of me that has a lot of files on it that I refer to in the game or during the game. But I do go back and I scribble notes on those sheets kind of off to the side that give me a reference of something that maybe I didn't have at the time I printed it out or something like that. But yeah, no, I like to think in my own mind, no one's going to outwork me as far as being prepared for a game. It's kind of, my calling card, if you will, or, a big, I guess, just fundamentally, there should be nothing that takes you by surprise. At least that's my goal throughout the course of a game. So, it's fun, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. And I think that's probably the one thing most people don't realize about my job. There's some people that think I just show up and talk football. There's a lot of things that go into it. It's a lot of homework, but it's fun homework. It's good homework, and it's stuff that I don't dread. Like, unlike, writing papers for my senior year lit class in high school and college, talking about the Buccaneers defense in the red zone is a little more appetizing to me.
I totally feel you. I mean, I got buddies who are like, "What? You're a sports media major, so you just have all this free time in your hand, like you just do nothing." It's like,
Right,
no,
right.
no, no. If I if I have a broadcast, I'm facing the notes all week. I switched to handwriting. I always thought my handwriting was too bad for me to do it, but I kind of like it. I've gotten into a bit of a handwriting groove. I read a story from Greg Doyle on your time at Franklin College. And I know every great story starts with, I read a story from Greg Doyle. But I'm impressed. Not only were you the voice of every sport there besides football because you were a football player, but you still ran the football broadcast in a way, set it up, did the interviews, all that stuff. I mean, when did you realize this is something you wanted to do? And what were those years in college like, kind of running a broadcast while being a player?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. A Division III school, like there's it just kind of, I mean, to each their own. I don't think I would have survived a minute at IU because the classes would have overwhelmed me. I don't think I would have gone to class because I would have been doing extracurricular stuff. Well, plus, I mean, I just loved football and wasn't, big enough and strong enough to play at IU. So Division III and my Franklin experience was just great for me individually because small school, small class sizes, I was able to continue my athletic career. But every moment that I wasn't, studying or writing a paper or lifting for the football team or going to practice and stuff like that, I was in the on-campus radio station just geeking out, just pushing buttons and figuring out, what things did and getting better. I mean, I go back and listen to my tapes in college. I mean, good God, they are awful. They're just so bad. And at the time I thought, man, I'm the next, like I said, I'm the next, Bob Costas. I'm going to be doing the Olympics in 4 years. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, I was, like that famous story, I think that you're referring to, like I would, on home games, I would go up, kind of half dressed in my football uniform, and 2 hours before the game, I would set up the radio gear for my, classmates and my peers to call the game that I was about to play in. And to be honest with you, like I said, like I submersed myself into the whole radio college experience. Like there was no one else that knew how to set up the gear but me. So it was on me anyways to do it. And so it was a ton of fun. It really was. And, like I said, my senior year, I would go to class, I would play football, and then I would do high school football on the side on Friday nights. And then on Saturday, I would play in a game, try to set up the gear for a game on Saturday. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, those are some good times, some good memories, and, some things I look back fondly on. It was truly a good college experience.
The grind is real. You are proof of that for sure. That is awesome and great advice. Thank you for that too, because it's just so reassuring to hear, you're at this level now. You still have so much potential, even though you're in your dream job. There's still so much, you could go so much farther. You could be the next Bob Costas. You never know where life's going to take you, but to hear that you started from a place where you thought you were going to be it, and now you're just better. And this is where you are today. It's fabulous.
Well, going back to the previous question, I don't know if it's good or bad. Looking back on it, it's probably a really bad thing, but I didn't have a plan B. I just didn't. I didn't have a plan B. And maybe that's what kept, fueling me. Maybe that's what kept the dream alive and allowing me to kind of just keep pushing forward. I'm sure if I wasn't in this situation, I'd probably have to kind of look in the mirror and say, is this what I want to keep doing? Do I want to keep chasing this dream? Do I have to settle for something else? That's all real. But yeah, I guess looking back on it, I guess just having, again, that experience of being a young kid at a very young age, knowing what I was passionate about. I think I was very blessed in that regard. Like, this is what I want to do. And so from that point on, it was like, how do I do it? What are the steps I need to take in order to gain the experience necessary to be in a position to go for something like that? Where do I need to work? What are some things I need to do beforehand, just to get all of this experience? And so that's, again, my biggest piece of advice is just kind of, know what you're passionate about, know what you want to do, and maybe more importantly, know what you don't want to do. I think that's equally as important. And to just chase a dream, and these jobs, no one's going to give you these jobs. Like, no one's just going to hand them out to you, and no one's going to knock on your door and say, hey, do you want to do this? If you're passionate about something and you really want something, go for it, and be a nuisance about it. Just be insufferable to yourself. Prove to yourself that I've done everything I need to do. That way, if again, wherever the chips fall, you'll have peace, and you'll have kind of that inner peace to yourself to know I did everything I could to make this happen, and I gave it my best shot. And I'm still giving it my best shot too. I mean, listen, it's the NFL. Sometimes the NFL, you can say it's not for long. They could yank me out of this chair tomorrow, because it's their NFL team. It's their organization. So if they don't like anything I'm doing or think they can get better, then you better believe they can do it. So I have to go and prove myself and prove my worth every day.
Well, before we let you go, I do want to ask you, because, and not just because Tamara and I are in this situation, but there's so many people right now in such a weird time where it looks like we're losing collegiate sports for at least this semester, and a lot of people who rely on those games to get their reels going and to get their broadcast going from those games and get experience, they're losing those. So what's your advice for those people to stay active, stay sharp, and to try and keep fine-tuning their craft even without collegiate games happening?
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing is great. I mean, this podcast, just start a podcast, and it doesn't matter what it is, just get behind the mic and get better. The more times you do something, no matter what it is, the more you're going to be better at it, the better you're going to be at it. That's my biggest piece of advice. It sounds like high school sports for the time being is a go. So knock on doors of high schools and say, I don't know if you have a web stream. I don't know if you have a webcast, but I'd like to start one, just to kind of mutually benefit everybody. You get the reps, you get the experience, you get the real stuff, the demo stuff, and their games get to be on the internet or on a radio station. Go to a radio station in a local community and say, hey, I'm not sure what you guys are doing. You don't even have to pay me. I'll do it for free just to get that experience, just to get that exposure. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is just somehow, some way, get creative to the point where you're still getting behind a mic or a camera or whatever it is, and you're still getting experience in this time, like you said, where opportunities and games and events seem to be drying up left and right.
Great advice, Matt. We really appreciate you giving us some of your time today. Best of luck this season. Look forward to listening to some of your calls and hopefully getting some normalcy back with some NFL football. But thanks for joining us, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. I really do. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, take care, Matt. Have a great season. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Matt. That was Matt Taylor, the voice of the Indianapolis Colts. So gracious with his time to give us his Monday afternoon on his first day back tomorrow. It was his first day back at work. Got to watch the guys out in full pads. It really was good to see some of those videos out on Twitter. It just feels like we're getting closer. And hearing him talk about the Colts, as a big Colts fan myself, it's like, man, I can't wait for a Sunday afternoon where I can turn on Matt Taylor and get excited about a Colts game again. It feels like it's been forever since I've been able to do that. So, but we really appreciate Matt coming on tomorrow. Another great show with another just great storyteller. He and just had so many great pieces of advice.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He gave me hope, seriously, in this time of craziness, and we don't know what to expect, what's going on. But the fact that he had those same kind of feelings that back when he was in college, and he had that same drive as us. We want to get there. We want to have football even. Like, we just having that hopeful mindset and that positive mindset, is really such an important thing, especially in this time right now. So thank you for bringing on Matt. He was just fabulous, fantastic. I'm so happy I got to meet him and talk with you.
He's just, like you said, great advice. He was in our shoes not too long ago, and he knows how to get out of our shoes and into bigger shoes and better shoes. And he's done that. He's traded in a lot of shoes for now the Indianapolis Colts, which is just awesome. And I'm like him. I memean, I was this weirdo at the age of 10, just trying to find any way to broadcast a video game or whatever you could. And I feel a lot of what he's talking about. So I agree. Great to have him on. We do have a great lineup for the rest of the week, but still some plans to be worked out in terms of whether or not they'll be at 11 o'clock. Zach Kiefer on Friday will likely be a little later because of Colts training camp. So we'll play that by ear. And then next week, we're still trying to figure out. We actually go back to school in a week from today. So I know I have a class at 11:15. So we'll have to figure out. It will be moving. We'll let you know what the live time will be starting next Monday. But you can always catch us whenever is at your easiest convenience. I don't know, that sentence didn't make any sense, but whenever it's most convenient for you, you can catch out our podcast or our video on the IU Sports Media YouTube page. You can catch our previous 38 episodes. We just had Dean Linke on from Big Ten Network, who gave us some really good advice as well on how to handle the pandemic as young aspiring broadcasters. So make sure you go check that episode out and any of our previous 38 that you'd like to check out wherever you get podcasts or on the IU Sports Media YouTube page. That'll wrap things up for our Monday episode. For Tamar Scher and Matt Taylor, I'm Austin Renders saying so long from Unpaid Interns. We'll see you on Wednesday.